Okay, welcome everyone to our first SOM+U webinar of the year. We're excited today to have JD and Tabatha from the Tillman Foundation talking to us today. I appreciate everyone showing up and supporting us like you do every time we have these webinars. Webinar etiquette, please mute your microphone and just raise your hand, or if you have a question, feel free. I think we're going to have this just kind of like JD was saying, just kind of a conversational format. So feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar.
Awesome. Well, Katie, thank you so much for this invite. And that's on behalf of the Tillman Foundation, Marie, our board of directors, the whole staff that we have that very much focuses in on our mission of uniting and empowering a remarkable group of military veterans, active duty service members in many cases, as well as military spouses. So we're super stoked to be able to spend this evening really explaining what I like to describe as an opportunity like no other. And more than anything, there are myriad opportunities that are out there when you think about scholarships, when you think about finding resources for higher education. And I would absolutely encourage anyone to take advantage of all those, particularly that really appeal to you and appeal to your interests. That said, however, if you are interested in pursuing higher education, and if you are convinced, and this is a really important point, that the best years of your service still lie in front of you, and if you're also committed to joining a community, a diverse community of like-minded leaders committed to making a positive impact, doing something that they are passionate about in the world, then please, please, please reach out to us. This opportunity is one that you should seek. And we are super excited to be able to talk to you about it this evening. I am JD. I'm the Director of Programs and Scholarships at the Tillman Foundation. I'm also a veteran of the United States Army. I served for 20 years in the Army before retiring. I'm a former veteran student many years ago, but then I'm also very, very proud to sort of be in my second act of service, which is another important theme that you'll see around this foundation. Being able to serve this community of veterans, military spouses, and active duty service members here at the Tillman Foundation. So again, super excited to talk to you about it, and also very excited to be joined by my colleague and a Tillman scholar herself, Tabatha Renz. And I'll let Tabatha introduce herself before we jump into things.
Awesome. Thanks, JD. Really just echoing everything JD said. This is truly a remarkable community. I had the great fortune of being named a Tillman Scholar in 2013. And then I've been working at the foundation as a program manager for about the last year and a half. So, it's a community that I enjoyed identifying with and being a part of so much that I had to come do this for a living. So I think that really speaks to, the quality and the character of our Tillman Scholars. So really excited to chat with you about the application. And offer some tips and tricks. if there's anything I can offer, hope to be able to do that for you today.
Yep. And then Will, I know you're probably no stranger to anyone here on this as well, but Will Eisenhart, also another Tillman scholar, as he is finishing up his degree. Will, feel free to jump in on this as well. And we want to treat this in a very conversational manner. Our application is open now. It opened up on the 1st of February. It will remain open till the 28th. So the timing of this conversation is really impeccable. It's a long application. In many ways, it should be, I think, a personal and a passionate application, because to be frank, that's what we're looking for. If you ask, at least for me, from say like a staff member's perspective of the foundation in terms of what are we looking for, the key things are we're looking for a proven track record of your service, but we're also very interested in what you want to do in the future. One of the things that we say a lot, one of the pieces of guidance that we give to people that sit on selection committees, is that every opportunity we provide, whether it is a generous academic scholarship whether it is connecting scholars with other scholars as part of this remarkable community, or if it's part of our professional development opportunities or leadership development opportunities that we offer, all of those benefits are not simply rewards for service rendered in the past. We actually view them as investments in the future. And so when you think about that application, that is really a significant challenge for you to directly address this month. How do you strike that balance? You have to give some insight of what you've done, to be sure, but more than anything, that emphasis really needs to be forward looking. Again, what are you passionate about? There's wonderful quotes that you see a lot, and I would encourage you to go to our website, right? You'll see the quotes from Pat himself, right? To err on the side of passion is human and right, and the only way I'll live. Ask yourself that same question. How can you convey that passion in the form of this application? It's a long application, yes. When you're filling out an application, it might not be the most, fun activity of filling in those different, components that are there. But the most compelling applications we see are actually those that are really good at using the whole application to tell your story, and to tell your story of how it then matches up with our organizational values of service, right? A dedication to service beyond self that has occurred both in and out of uniform. How your story relates to scholarship, which is really conveying how you might be a lifelong learner and passionate about intellectual growth and its application. How it relates to humble leadership. Are you selflessly committed to leading by example? And then fourthly, what is your impact? How are you determined to unite others to advance ideas that can truly change the world or change a community? Those four values: service, scholarship, humble leadership, impact. I will be very candid. Those are our selection criteria. So when you are crafting that application, keep those things in mind. Keep your audience in mind, that upwards of 25 to 30 different people are going to read this application. And that is at the heart of the matter. And as Tabatha sort of remarked, really what we're doing is we are trying to invest in future potential and build this really cool and really rewarding community as it sort of exists. Tabatha, anything that you'd like to add or take on from there?
Yeah, I think so really focusing in on the essay aspect, and I would just say, like, don't sell yourself short, right? Like, we don't know your story, you know your story, and you need to be able to portray that and put that into the application so that we get a really good sense of who you are and what it is that you want to do. It just comes with the territory. One of our core values is humble leadership. So we know that you're all very humble, but if you don't tell us kind of where you're headed and what you want to do with the degree that we'd be supporting, it makes it really hard for us to fill in those pieces. So, I encourage you to, as you're drafting that, have other people look at it, folks that know you really well and some that maybe don't know you as well, and ask them, like, do you get a good sense of who I am and what I want to do from this? And then feel free to, draft it once, twice, three times. There will probably be many iterations of those essays. And I think that's where the really good applications I've seen, like, that's where the people you can tell that is where they've spent their time. So I would say definitely focusing in on the essays and be, I would say, a little bit broad in your idea of service, right? Like, of course, everyone that's named a Tillman Scholar is either, active duty, a veteran, or a military spouse. That part we know. But what other types of service have you done? So when I was selected, I had been selected as a military spouse. And so I've focused in on, my own service, whether that be, in my case, it was AmeriCorps, but really taking service in a broader sense. Like, how else, outside of your military service, have you been serving your community? So include all of those types of things, just to give us a good sense of kind of who you are as a whole person, certainly including your military service, but also outside of that.
And I think in particular, another thing that we see, if you look at our our webpage, there's about just shy of 700 Tillman scholars exist in the world today. There's 694. Of that group of Tillman scholars, about a third are serving in some capacity in the realm of healthcare, whether that is medical doctors, psychiatrists. We have a wonderful group of midwives that are there, right? So that even within the healthcare field, it's a very, very broad community. And I think when you're forming that application, it's more than just, treating patients. As remarkable and as important as that is, I think it's important to be able to articulate your passion to stand above, right? One of the things I like to say, the Latin root of doctor means to teach, right? And that is an aspect of service as well. And oftentimes in our selection committees, because the selection rate has ranged between about 2.4 to 3.5% over the past couple of years. I mean, that's a tough cut. And being able to show not only how you can do a little bit of double duty, not only in the important duties that come with being a practitioner, but then how else can you contribute to the broader field? I think that's an important balance to try to be able to articulate as it applies to this group in particular, right? I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Will, is there anything that you would like to add along those lines, particularly in this notion of these essays and other parts of the application to tell this story?
Yeah, by all means. So it's really interesting. When I actually applied, I went to SOMA, and some of the guys in this room know what SOMA is. And I'm hanging out. Next thing you know, there's like 7 of us, and we're all talking about how we applied to Tillman. I'm looking around. I'm like, I know that dude. I know that dude. 2 of the guys were my instructors at Stockholm, and I'm like, these are some awesome guys. Like, how do I stand out against these guys? And like all of a sudden, next thing I know, like, yeah, I applied and I didn't get past the first round. And another guy said, I didn't get out of the first round either. So 3 of us were talking, we're like, oh, we made the second round. And so I kept in touch with those guys. And so by the time it got to that second round, I talked to the other dudes and they're like, we're out. And then I had a discussion with them after I went to the Pat Tillman Leadership conference up in Chicago. And we had this discussion because they're like, we're going to apply next year. What do you have any advice? I said, I would downplay a little bit of you being special operations medic because there's so many of you guys applying. So what separates you from everyone else? Like, okay, you were a Navy SEAL and you were a corpsman. How does it separate you from Ed Byers, the Medal of Honor winner? Or you were an SF medic. How does it separate you from Carl Holt when the helicopter hit the ground and you broke your back and you got your teeth knocked out and you're doing medicine on the ground? And I said, I never did a deployment as a special operations medic. I did a deployment as a Navy EOD guy. It has nothing to do at all with whatever I did to go to PA school. And my emphasis in my essay wasn't about me being in the military as much as my mom. And I love my mom to death because my mom is a middle school educated woman that grew up in Korea, and she decided to pack me up and send me across to America with herself, not understanding the culture at all and hating the food. And so that's who really drove me. I mean, I met some really amazing people in my time in the military, some really amazing people. And Katie and her husband are some of those individuals, and Ricky and some of the other individuals inside of SOM+C. I look at them as like rock stars. And I still think my mom is my hero. And so I kind of diverted away from my military service and focused more on my mom. And so that definitely kind of altered like who I was in terms of an essay, of who I was in that essay.
No, great points on that. Tabatha, anything else to add on terms of the essay or the other components of the application?
Yeah, I would say, so JD already mentioned, head over to the website and check that out. I think as you're on the website, it's maybe useful to read some of the bios of some of the past Tillman scholars, and not necessarily to compare yourself to them, because I guarantee you were gonna get into a bit of a spiral where you say there's, how could I possibly compete with this? That's not the point, just really to help you see the type of community that we have. I have 693 best friends basically through this community. Tillman scholars are the people that are gonna, help you through some some really good times, they're going to be there to cheer for you, and they're going to help you through some not so great times too. When I moved to New York for my master's degree as a Tillman scholar, I didn't know anyone in the city. My first 2 friends in the city and that I remain friends with now were scholars. It's like that kind of bond and connection that you have. So as you're reading those bios, just think, can I see myself, do I want to hang out with this person? Really is something that we ask ourselves, when we're reading applications, and we have to read a lot of them. We want to get a sense from the application, like, is this someone that is, going to fit with our community? And are other scholars going to be super excited to talk about them on social media and, boost them up? So just read some of those bios and get a sense of the really awesome community that you'd be a part of.
I think an interesting way, and the challenge is you have 2 400-word essays, and those 400 words go quick. And I think a key balance to think about, though, is how can you, with a degree of humility, keep that balance of what can you do to benefit from this community, while simultaneously being able to make a very clear statement of how can you contribute to this community. And that balance of both benefiting and contributing is important, because that is what the community does after that point of selection, as Tabatha and William and Will just sort of emphasized. And the other component that I think is worthwhile to take some time, particularly like this week and the next, within February, a application window, is a conversation along those lines with your recommender. That is the other, I think, key piece, that having some conversations between you and that recommender helps to really then complement what they can offer in terms of helping to tell that story. The way the recommendation process works, it's not a independently written recommendation letter. We ask a series of questions about you to that recommender. So it makes sense that it's somebody that knows you well. Don't simply aim for the highest rank that you could possibly find. That doesn't always work unless that person happens to know you well. But again, it's somebody that can sort of attest to your character, that can address that question of how could this person both simultaneously benefit from this community as well as contribute to it as well. I think that's a really, really important thing to think through. And then on the time management piece, as you revise, I would also encourage anyone it's a long application, and by the time you finish up the essays, you actually might have forgotten what the general information piece would have asked. Factor in some time just to go back and look at different points of what you can input. Should you adjust your resume a little bit to add in another complementary piece of emphasis that helps to really connect your story with those values that I mentioned earlier, and the other pieces that are there. I'll open this up, and we want to save plenty of time for questions that anyone might have in terms of general or specific questions. Definitely want to have some time for that. But before going to those questions, I was curious, Will first, and then back over to Tabatha. As you sit in the world now in February 2021, looking back a few years, what is probably the top piece of advice that you would offer somebody in the midst of the application window?
I think a lot of these guys are in medical programs. I think that's the hardest thing. I was in my didactic year, and I spent a weekend hacking away at it in the midst of studying, and then I put it away, went back and forth, and I did not hit that submit button until the very last minute. And I literally sent it off to multiple people to have them groom it and send it back. And I think the hardest part is that time management piece, because I think a lot of people, because they're so slammed while they're in school, just try to do it like it's a quick essay and then send off. I would say wait until that 28th. I mean, you don't get extra points for sending it off early.
Great point. And I think another piece that I've heard multiple people say, Will, that your comment registered to me too, that it's a different application than what got you to medical school or PA school or nursing school as well. And so remember that. And again, I think that goes back to my previous point of know what you're applying for, and then know what that selection criteria is. And candidly what we're looking for in terms of building this diverse, remarkable community that's seeking to make an impact in the future. Great points, Will. Tabatha, your piece of advice?
Yeah, this was a day or two ago for me, but I think that in thinking back about my application, I think where I could have definitely improved and just made it sharper would have been with my character recommendations. I had not done due diligence in, making sure that I could have, maybe my college advisor or a professor or someone, like I hadn't, I suppose, built up those connections enough to feel comfortable asking. So I ended up going with someone that probably didn't know me as well as someone else that, had maybe seen me more in my day-to-day. So I think that would be my piece. It worked out for me, but that would probably be where I just really think through who you want to recommend you, because we do read all those and we take them to heart, especially when we're thinking through, as you are all humble leaders, there may be things that you don't talk about in your application, but then that your, recommender brings up, or certain qualities that we didn't pick up on in your application, but that, the recommender is able to point to. And especially if there's, any specific examples, that a recommender can give, like saying, oh yeah, this person would be great because, service is, I feel like every year we have at least like 100 people say like service is part of their DNA. Like, that's fantastic. But what does that mean? So like just some concrete examples. And I think it's pretty clear in reading through those letters, the folks that really know you are able to point to some of that. So that would be an area that if I could go back and do it again, I would focus in on a little bit more. And probably have a conversation, with my recommender and make sure that even if I didn't see, a final draft before it got sent in, just made sure that there were some bullet points that were hit. And I did not take the time to do that.
No, I think those are for both of us as well as Will, some wonderful piece of advice. And in summary, the things I would continue to emphasize, again, think of the application as a means to tell your story. And in telling that, one of the last statements that I think that any reader would have to be able to take away from is a clear understanding of what you want to do, which is a result of you crafting a strong, clear, concise impact statement that's really your last word within those essays. I think that's a key thing to keep in mind of that revision process. And big picture, again, I can't probably overemphasize this idea of what we're looking for. We're not looking to reward solely something that's happened in the past. Obviously, that whatever those things that have happened to you in the past are informing who you are and what you're going to do. But that is what we're really looking for, that investment in the future. So those are I think really important things to keep in mind. But we definitely want to then, I think now's probably a great time. Will, Tabatha, anything else you want to add before we sort of open up to any questions to the rest of the group? Cool. Well, do not be shy. Feel free to unmute, ask. Anything is fair game. We're more than happy to be able to provide whatever insight that we can into the process, the application, and the opportunities.
So I got a quick question.
Yeah.
Nice to meet everybody. JD, nice to meet you. I know I talked with you over email quickly, but
indeed.
Yeah. So quick question is, I know there's like when you get funding if you're a scholar, but the way I see it, I'm sure the way like a lot of people see it is like, really it's like when you're trying to have an impact, the larger benefit is just having this network of other scholars who you can collaborate with and work with. I didn't see anything on the website about this, but is there anything like where, yeah, you can apply, the funding isn't an issue. Can you apply for just so you can be part of this, group of awesome people and then have that network to then, pursue things that you want to pursue. I know Will talked about, he collaborated with another Tillman Scholar to start this thing over in Africa, right? And when you're working with kind of like-minded people who want to pursue stuff like that, it's less about I mean, obviously it's amazing to have the funding so you can pursue your education and everything, but building out like the network, is there any like application where you can, hey, I just want to be a part of this group of people? The funding is not like cool. The funding would be awesome, like obviously, but just being connected with all these great people.
That's a great point in a couple of ways. For a couple of things. One, in terms of the selection criteria, it is purely a merit-based selection. So what we do, and even though we do, I mean, one of the requirements is that you complete the FAFSA form. We're asking for financial information, but that actually, none of the selection committees see that at all. That isn't actually accessed until after we've selected the 60 Tillman Scholars. And then there is going to be a degree of variance. Not all 60 will get the same amount, and we will look at that based off those different aspects of need that exist there. Because I mean, the overwhelming response that we get, and I'll let both Tabatha and Will talk to this, is that it's so much more than a scholarship on that particular that particular point. So I think those are two really key things just to sort of understand in that piece. And every year we have somebody actually say, hey, I don't, we say, hey, we'll give you this amount in terms of the check, and they come back and say, no thanks, I don't need it, but I just do want to be a part of this community. Tabatha, anything, your thoughts?
No, I think same thing. Peter, I'm just curious, where are you based?
I just got out of the military, so I'm in Colorado right now, but
great.
I'm not based. I'll be in New York City with Chris, actually. That's cool.
Okay, awesome, super. So I, in my normal life, also am not currently existing in my normal life, but in my normal life, I am also based in New York. We've got a great crew out there. So one of the programs that we run for scholars is our regional captain program. So we've got kind of a geographic split going where we've got kind of ambassadors, so Tillman scholars that serve as regional captains to kind of liaise between scholars on the ground and us at the foundation. So for example, in New York, in the tri-state area, we've got about 40 Tillman scholars, and we routinely get together, do stuff, or virtually when necessary. But I think, opportunities to do that, although, I mean, you hit it, right? Like you just want to hang out with this group of people. And we've seen a lot of collaborations come out of some of these groups that get together. So if you're going to be in New York, I'm happy to to make those connections, whether you are a scholar this year or not. I think being around that group of scholars, I'd be happy to make some intros and have you meet some really great folks. I think we've got a pretty good region going out there.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I just want to mingle and talk with everyone, all the other Tillman scholars. I know Chris feels the same way because Chris and I have talked about this a lot, but yeah, that would be fantastic just to meet up at some point. Thanks.
I could tell you that in the DC metro area, we just had a meeting last month about this group called Action Tank. And it wasn't just exclusively for the Tillman scholars. And it was really cool because the person on the call was the guy that started Action Tank up in Philly, Chris Diaz. And what was really interesting is that Chris Diaz, he was like an animated character on the screen. I was like, wow, bro. Like I could feel your energy coming off of the Zoom call. It was ridiculous. And he was in DC for just some random thing. And a couple of weeks later, we read why. He's now part of the Biden staff. So I was like, wow, man, pretty darn cool. But so he kicked off Action Tank in Philly. And next thing you know, we're trying to duplicate it down in DC. And it's not a Tillman thing. It is a human being thing, getting it down there and trying to make a difference in our communities. So it seems like these Tillman scholars around the country are doing some amazing things. And by all means, I think Tabatha is going to help you plug into the New York area.
Awesome. That'd be great. Maybe we'll start up Action Tank New York City.
That'd be great. And again, those different collaborations. I mean, two of the co-founders of Service to School, Tillman scholars, right? Tim Shaw, Khalil Tawil. that they meet through this foundation, and that's another example of the collaboration of things that develop. Just today we're corresponding, a Tillman scholar that's has his master's and he's a licensed clinical social worker. Another one is getting his doctorate in veterinary medicine. They're talking about developing equine therapy for Native American communities, right? I mean, what a wonderful, community. And again, it used to be like the preface to a punchline of a joke, like a doctor, a vet, and a microbiologist walk into a bar, right? But that is what is sometimes happening after some of the different events that we host. And I would encourage everyone as well to keep a long-term view on this entire application process as well. So each year we will get in between 1,800 to 2,500 completed applications. We select 60 of those. But what's been interesting over at least the past 3 years is of those 60 that are selected, and between 20 to 22, a third have been selected on either their second, third, and in some cases their fourth attempts at joining this community. So I think those are important points of contact that are really important to keep in mind at the same time.
That's great. Hi, I'm Chris
Yeah.
Bellaire. I'm a repeat applicant. This will be my third year applying. I'm also New York based and service the school. So maybe these stars are aligning. But I was really hoping to ask Tabatha and Will, like, how has the Tillman community kind of going forward influenced what they, put in their application? Is it mostly through the annual conference? Are there other avenues that the Tillman Foundation facilitates, collaboration and working together on, what they stated in their application?
Yeah, Will, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, by all means, I want you to do that first.
Okay. So definitely, yeah. So the Leadership Summit is kind of our largest convening of scholars every year. This year, of course, in 2020, it went virtual, but everyone was still very excited to connect, even virtually. Pat's Run, a large contingent of scholars head out to Pat's Run in Tempe every year, and for people that aren't able to make it to Tempe, we have kind of remote shadow runs in several US cities, just for, again, kind of some of that community and team building. Some of the other things that we offer, JD mentioned our professional development funds. So in addition to your scholarship award, we have funds available, kind of mini grants up to $1,000 that you can use for a professional development opportunity. So a couple of years ago, before I came to work for PTF, I used the funding as a scholar to get a certification in as a certified change agent, and then have been able to use that in my daily work a lot. There's a lot of changes in nonprofit, especially after the year of COVID. So that has proved to be super useful. And then, yeah, I would say, the community just supports one another. Not everyone is currently doing what they, thought they were going to be doing. Maybe it's not exactly what they wrote in their application. Mine certainly is not. I mean, I got a master's degree in public policy, and I'm here, but I think I'm making the impact that I need to be making, and, really working hard to live up to Pat's legacy and carry that forward every day. And so that, that manifests differently, and it's, it may not always look the same, but, you'll find a group of scholars that is going to support you and kind of push you to keep going. It's extremely energizing to hear what scholars are working on. We've got a section, and we do a monthly newsletter, and what a new section that we added in there is like Tillman scholars in the news, or like what's going on with Tillman scholars. And I think we're pretty soon going to need to do a newsletter like just about that because there's so many great things going. But we've got like a private Facebook group. A lot of people hang out in that little group, just, you know, to talk amongst each other. You know, maybe they're sharing memes, but maybe they're, you know, boosting up one another for some work done. So we've, I think, come up with a really organic way of staying in touch and, you know, being able to work together even when we can't all come together.
Yeah, I definitely want you to go first because I went to the leadership summit and that was pretty much it. I was trying to go to honors, but I was in didactics. I couldn't go, and then COVID happened. So I was at least lucky to go to the leadership summit in 2019. I feel really bad for the people that got accepted in 2020. I was also lucky enough to actually meet my regional captains really quick before everyone went inside. And I have two amazing regional captains in Kim Chauncey Granger and Drew Garza in the DC metro area. And they were really awesome to talk to in the very short time I got a chance to talk to them. And in terms of what I plan to do in terms of my essay, I haven't graduated yet again. So I'm hoping that once I surface out of this clinical rotation and pass my boards, that I can actually start doing some of the things I jotted down in my essay. I'm fully hoping that I get to go overseas and do some pop-up field goods with some former soft medics. And I love this organization that Katie and Josh kicked off, because I really do feel that there's a lot of service in this organization of soft medics.
You know, great questions and wonderful points on each of those. And again, part of our mission on the staff is that we're constantly on the search. It's a phrase that we've taken from a group of Tillman scholars that offered it to us when we were getting some feedback of how can we just find meaningful connections, right? We're not just trying to throw people in terms of a particular event. We're always constantly looking for minor adjustments or just points of convergence, as Tabatha said, that happen organically and as organically as possible to really bring meaning to that. And years like the past one, I think, only reinforce how important those meaningful connections really are, even if those connections are happening in very unexpected ways. And the two-dimensional world of all the different boxes of Zoom, we are still fighting as best we can to find that meaning and the meaningful connections and points of collaboration. So I think those, again, when we say community, that is what it's looking like, and the reality that is now, as well as once things get to a point where we can safely convene safely, so we can replicate the before times. But a key thing to keep in mind.
All right, another quick question for the leadership summit. Is that for the scholars, the 60 that are selected for that year, and they go to a leadership summit together? How does that work?
No, that's a great question. So it is mandatory for those that are just selected, right? So the purpose of the summit itself is twofold. One is to integrate that incoming class into the broader community, and the second purpose is to highlight some of the work that broader community has been doing. So ideally, we have a group of about 130 to 150 Tillman scholars on the ground. So again, 60 of the incoming class, and then upwards of 90 of returning Tillman scholars that are available to attend, that we like to bring back for that. So it is a true integration into this community, with people being, you know, matched up, even in terms, you get to live in a dorm, you're welcome, right? You know, but even in terms of how we match up people in similar suites, we try to put a lot of thought towards that to, again, present an opportunity for a meaningful connection. Tabatha, anything else you want to add? You've seen a couple of these underneath your belt, so.
Yeah, just one thing that we started doing a few years ago that I think has been really valuable is each new scholar is paired with a scholar from a previous year as a mentorship, and so that match is made right before Leadership Summit, and so you, as a new scholar, have an opportunity to have a conversation with someone that's, you know, kind of been through this. It can be, you know, a little overwhelming to show up in Chicago for 3 days and you don't know anyone, and there's just this, you know, you realize kind of, I think, the gravity of like what it means to be a Tillman scholar. And it, for me at least, it did not hit me until I got to Chicago and was sitting in this room, and, you know, I'm listening to Marie Tillman, you know, talk about what this means. And like, I knew it was a big deal, but I think in that moment, I truly understood it. So having someone that you can, kind of debrief with after some of the panel discussions, or a keynote, or even some of our breakout discussions is super useful. And then I served as a mentor this year and last year as a scholar, and it's fun to be checking in with my mentee, and it's an automatic person that you have kind of guiding you through this process and helping you get the most out of being a Tillman scholar. I think I've heard people ask before in some of the info sessions that we've done, and I think this came up last year. We did a presentation at Student Veterans of America conference in LA, and someone asked those of us on the panel, like, what is the requirement of being a Tillman scholar? And I found myself being a little puzzled, because I was like, oh, I don't actually really have an answer. Like, there are certainly basic requirements. You need to maintain a certain GPA, some of those kinds of things. We ask you to be doing some community service, but above and beyond that, it's really what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So I would just also take that into account as you're applying. I think Will is a great example. Like, he has been very busy, and there's different seasons of life to our Tillman scholars, right? Like, there's going to be times where you're able to engage more easily, and other times, whether that's a few months or a few years, where you may have to take a step back. But just knowing that you can flow back in, super easily, I think it's a great net to kind of have.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was curious for those summits where everyone comes together, how it kind of runs. I'm not trying to get ahead of myself. I'm just kind of thinking it's super interesting how it's, yes, I know Will's laughing. I'm just curious how you end up pairing, like doing the breakout sessions, like, so you maximize the interest of people. Is it like, hey, if you're interested in like this one industry or medicine, like for us, probably like medicine is something more, compelling for us, what we want to like look into doing. So for those breakout sessions, is it like, hey, you guys who are and gals who are interested in this thing, go over here, and it's like you just head wherever you're interested? Or is it just you're assigned to different groups and then you just mingle and hope that, through these conversations you get to talk about big ideas that you have and projects you want to work on?
Yeah. So a little bit of both, but mostly the former. Yep. So especially during mealtime is a great time for us to do this. So we will break out we call it impact areas. So we'll have, everyone that's doing something in law, although that's a very broad, that could be any number of things. Like, everyone that is doing something in law gets together, and then they are able to kind of break out amongst themselves to talk in a little bit more detail about things that they're working on. We also break out geographically. So that would be an opportunity where you're meeting people in your area, so that when you leave Chicago and you go back, you've got those connections made. And then we do some separate breakouts for spouses as well.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah. We're constantly trying to balance all those different ways to cross-reference. And then we will then also have panel discussions that are broad and designed to stretch across those different impact areas. Like a couple of years ago, we had a session on the imposter syndrome, right? How do you deal being a humble leader in a group of very high achieving people? Does it feel odd to be in that room? Yes, right. Can everyone agree to that answer? Yes. And then what are some different ways that you can still have positive thoughts, as you're moving forward in that particular area? And then some of the panel discussions will be timely in nature. Others will be a little bit more specific in their focus, but always those cross references, as Tabatha just mentioned. Will, did you have something to add as well?
Yeah. So it was really interesting. I was going to say something else, but that imposter syndrome was amazing, because afterwards, I remember we were mingling with a group of people, and I knew guys on the Navy side. Next thing you know, I'm standing beside Ed Byers, and we're talking about imposter syndrome. And he looked at me, and he looked at our group and said, "I don't know why I'm here." And I'm like, "Dude, you have a Medal of Honor, man. If you don't know why you're here, I don't know why you're here. I don't know why I'm here, kind of thing." But Yeah, those breakout sessions and also the panel discussions are pretty amazing. You really find out the quality and caliber of individuals that come into this foundation. It's just staggering. And even when you're just hanging out in the audience and you look back and a whole bunch of kids are kind of eating mac and cheese, and you start commenting on their mac and cheese, and then you look over and you're talking to Marie Tillman's kids. You're like, hi. It's really cool just being in the audience with everybody.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful piece. Again, there's a feel of a family reunion of sorts is the best way to describe it of each of the different events that we host, which again is just very special, very very unique. Again, a remarkable opportunity, unlike any other.
I have one application question.
Yeah.
So you all have talked a lot about, obviously past accomplishments, but also plans for the future and continued service. Do you prefer to see that voiced in terms of kind of general values and like aspirations, or more like Will, where there's a very specific project-based initiative? I'm thinking about for myself, so I want to be an orthopedic surgeon. I want to work with, in terms of values, that would be, working with veterans, working with amputees, and, working with prosthetics and so forth. And that's kind of a general career trajectory versus, I want to start a nonprofit that, does advanced research on, orthopedic prosthetics and, maybe delivers them to war-torn countries or something, like, do you want to see just like kind of general values, or do you want very kind of packaged projects and things that we want to accomplish going forward?
Tabatha, you want to take first whack at that one?
So I would say the more specific you can be would be great. If you've got an idea for a project, I mean you just articulated it really well. So go back and listen to this recording and then just type up what you just said. I think that is really great. I think you can cover some elements of a little bit of both, but really where we can see how your past service kind of points you in the direction of what you want to do. And if you're kind of painting a picture of, this is where I am right now, this is where I want to be, here's, some maybe steps I'm going to take to get there, can really help us see what type of impact you're going to have. So I would personally say, if you can, the more specific, the better, but I'll let JD answer that too.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, I think the specificity, the power of the specificity is able to come up of how it aligns with your passion, right? Sometimes, particularly in selection committees, if there's a big idea that's thrown out there, it might precipitate the how question, right? And that's where the specificity really gets in there. But again, Christopher, as you just sort of described it, I think that is pointed in the right direction. And as you're going through that revision process for that people that know you well, I think that's the key thing to be able to sort of to hone in on. Because then you're able to take an application that instead of just, hey, this is helping me get an MD, that's not the, or whatever degree it might be, that is not the end, right? That is yet more investment to really get you to what that specific goal is going to be. Is that helpful?
That was very helpful. I guess I was just reflecting on what Will said, about his application and his project, and just the realities of, a lot of medical training takes. I mean, I have 2 years of medical school left, plus 5 years of residency, plus a year of fellowship. I'm looking at like a decade from now that this would probably be a possibility to actually take action on. And I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver and, state that I'm going to do these, big things in my application and then fail to do it, at least on a immediate timeline. So I just wanted to, get your thoughts on that. and it's very helpful. So thank you.
Will?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First and foremost, JD has mentioned it multiple times. They're investing in you. It's not like, hey, we're giving you money for a scholarship, because I've applied to other scholarships and got it, because all it is like I submit an application, that's it, I get the money, cool. And this isn't free money. They're investing in you. So how Carl Holt told me how to do it is like, hey, if I'm going to give you this much money, you better pitch me something. If you're in a room with me, tell me how you're going to spend my money. And so that's changed my essay for that second part. I'm like, whoa. And I can tell you on the second part of what you just said, Chris, you're a medical student. I can tell you right now, Andy Fisher is probably one of the most busiest dudes I've ever met. That guy publishes every other week, it seems. And he is really active inside of a chat group, giving advice and helping out people in terms of research. Andy Fisher is not as active as he was when he was in medical school. He is in his first year intern year as a general surgeon. He's getting crushed. Song Hyok was going overseas every single summer that he had downtime at Pitt. It's over for him. It's absolutely over. He's in his first year at Brigham and his surgical internship. And like he texts me constantly. He's like, this is miserable. He tells himself it's like being underneath the boat at Buzz, or underneath a boat when he was going through recon training. That's how miserable he is right now. So whatever he had planned for what he was going to do with the Tillman Foundation, it's on hold. And it's not like the Tillman Foundation is like, hey, you owe us right now. Because like he's got to get through his residency to actually make that difference on the ground. And he plans to be that guy on the ground that's going to take a crap job making no money to do stuff overseas, because I know who he is. But the thing is, it's not like the Tillman Foundation is like, hey, man, you got to pay up. They're not going to break your legs if you don't deliver in the first couple of years or so. At least I don't think so, right, JD?
Not at all. Will, in just very stark terms, described what we really think of when Tabatha mentioned a season of life earlier. Some of those seasons of life are those crap times that Will was just describing, and we're very, very aware of that. But it's also important to realize that on these selection committees that the applications go through, half the people on each of those committees are going to be Tillman scholars themselves. And I think that's an important thing to understand. So those committees are comprised, there are Tillman scholars on there. Marie Tillman will sit on the final selection committee that we have. John Krakauer, oftentimes will come back to sit on those. So we have friends of the foundation, people that knew Pat, but then the majority of folks that will look at your application will be other Tillman scholars. And I think that's an important component of how the community has matured, how it will continue to mature and lead moving forward. So when you think about your audience in terms of the clarity and the purpose that you want to articulate, that's another, I think, key insight to keep in mind too.
So it sounds like I shouldn't do general surgery when I start then.
There's so much to look forward to, Pete.
Yep. I don't have any more questions, but this has been super, super helpful, and I really appreciate it. And I mean, I'll see you some of you on the 11th as it is.
Indeed. Well, we do look forward to that. Again, Katie, thank you for organizing this. Again, as I said, on behalf of the foundation, we are always thrilled to be able to work with partners such as you. It's a key component of what this community is able to just accomplish, and insights that we're able to share. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, JD and Tabatha, for jumping on this today. We had a lot of interest in it. We have Tillman scholars at SOM+C, so everyone was really excited to have you guys on. I know we didn't have tons of attendees tonight. Maybe it was our first SOM+U of the year. So I'm glad that we have it recorded so we can continue to share and hopefully have you guys on again.
Yeah, we'd be more than happy to join. And again, to those that are applying, best of luck. We look forward to reading your application here and starting in a couple of weeks.
Very excited. Katie, thanks so much. How are you not a Tillman scholar already?
Oh my gosh. My husband just asked me that. Why haven't you applied?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much to everyone. Really appreciate it. Tabitha, JD, Katie, Will, as always. Chris, I'll see you back in New York for sure.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you all. Good night. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Bye.
Bye.